The smell reached them first. Not fire, not smoke, something older, something wrong. A sulfur stench crawling through the morning air like a warning no one had a word for yet. Dogs were barking in every street. Wells that had run cold for generations were suddenly warm to the touch. And the mountain, the one they had farmed beside, built temples toward, named their gods next to for centuries, the mountain was breathing. It was August 24th, 79 AD, and in a few hours, the most prosperous city on the Bay of Naples would simply cease to exist. But here's what most people don't know about Pompeii. Some got out, not many, not enough. But some people, through instinct, timing, sheer desperate decision-making, survived one of the most catastrophic volcanic eruptions in recorded human history. And the question that has haunted archaeologists, volcanologists, and historians ever since is this: what did it take? Today, using AI-assisted historical reconstruction, archaeological data from nearly 2 centuries of excavation, and the latest findings in volcanology, we're going to do something that has never been done quite like this before. We're going to walk through Pompeii in real time, hour by hour. We're going to follow the people who were there, the baker, the politician, the slave, the soldier, the mother, and we're going to trace the exact chain of decisions that separated those who lived from those who didn't. Stay with me, because this isn't just history, this is survival. To understand what happened on August 24th, 79 AD, you first have to understand what Pompeii was, and why nobody saw it coming. Pompeii was not a small town. It was not a quiet backwater. By the time of the eruption, it was a thriving commercial hub of somewhere between 11,000 and 20,000 people, sitting 8 miles southwest of Vesuvius on the Sarno River plain. It had paved streets, multi-story apartment buildings, fast food counters called thermopolia on nearly every corner, a massive amphitheater that seated 20,000, 2 theaters, a forum, bathhouses, temples, brothels, and more wine shops per square block than almost anywhere else in the Roman world. It was, in every sense that matters, a city of the living. Loud, crowded, commercial, political, messy, human. And the mountain? Vesuvius loomed over all of it like a backdrop on a stage. So constant, so permanent, so utterly unremarkable that generations of Pompeians had simply stopped seeing it. Farmers had been cultivating its lower slopes for centuries. The soil, enriched by ancient eruptions nobody remembered, was some of the most fertile in Italy. Vineyards crept up toward the summit, villas dotted the hillside. There were even people living on Vesuvius itself. Here is the staggering truth. The Romans had no concept of what a volcano was. The word volcano didn't exist yet. Vesuvius had last erupted in approximately 1800 BC, nearly 2,000 years before 79 AD. There was no oral tradition, no warning passed down through generations. The mountain was simply the mountain, ancient, silent, generous with its soil. They did not know they were living inside a death trap, but the earth knew, and for months, possibly years, it had been trying to tell them. This is one of the most haunting aspects of the entire story, and it deserves to be told slowly. In 62 AD, 17 years before the eruption, a massive earthquake shook the region. Seneca the Younger wrote about it. Pompeii was severely damaged, buildings collapsed. The city spent the better part of 2 decades rebuilding. And even in 79 AD, at the time of the eruption, construction scaffolding was still visible on several structures. They were still fixing the damage from 62 AD when the mountain finally blew. That earthquake in 62 AD was, we now know, a direct precursor to the eruption. The magma chamber beneath Vesuvius was building pressure. The earth was fracturing under the strain. But to the Romans, earthquakes were simply acts of the gods, expressions of divine displeasure perhaps, but not geological warnings of anything imminent. You made sacrifices, you rebuilt, you moved on. In the months and weeks before August 24th, 79 AD, the warning signs intensified dramatically. Minor earthquakes became more frequent. Springs and wells began drying up, a phenomenon caused by hydrothermal disruption beneath the surface. The Bay of Naples behaved strangely. Fishermen reported unusual currents, dead fish floating near the shore, water that steamed near the coastline. Animals became agitated. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, who would die in the eruption itself, attempting a rescue mission by ship, noted unusual cloud formations over the mountain in the days before. And yet, people stayed. Why? Because humans are remarkably, stubbornly, tragically resistant to leaving the familiar. Because the crops still needed harvesting. Because the shop on the forum still needed to open. Because the elections were coming up. Yes, Pompeii had active political campaigns happening in August of 79 AD, with candidates' names still visible in painted graffiti on the walls when archaeologists uncovered them. And nobody wanted to abandon their city during election season over a few earthquakes. Because leaving means admitting something is wrong. And most people, most of the time, are not built to do that. So they stayed, and the mountain waited. August 24th, 79 AD, early afternoon. The sun is high and brutal over the bay. The forums are crowded. The bakeries, and archaeologists have found over 30 bakeries in Pompeii, are finishing their midday rush. Children are in the streets. Dogs sleep in the shade of doorways. Then, just after noon, it happens. A sound like nothing any living person has ever heard. A crack that some survivors later described as the earth itself splitting apart. And then the sky above Vesuvius simply opens up. The eruption column, a superheated pillar of gas, ash, rock, and pumice, shoots upward at a velocity of over 1,000 miles per hour. Within minutes, it reaches an altitude of nearly 20 miles. 20 miles. The eruption column towers over the city like a second sky, a dark, churning tower that blocks the sun and turns the afternoon into a false twilight. Pliny the Younger, then 17 years old, watching from Misenum, 18 miles away, wrote the only first-hand account of what happened. He described the column as resembling a pine tree, a thick trunk rising into the sky and then spreading out into branches at the top. What he was seeing, though he didn't know it, was one of the most violent eruption columns ever documented in European history. We now classify it as a Plinian eruption, named, in fact, after him and his uncle. The pumice falls first. Small at first. Pebble-sized fragments of hardened volcanic material raining down on the city. Warm. Stinging. Strange. In the first minutes, some people may have simply stood in their doorways and looked up in bewilderment. Children may have caught the falling stones in their hands before the pain registered, but the pumice keeps coming. Faster. Heavier. And here is where the first great decision point arrives. The first fork in the road between survival and death. Volcanologists and archaeologists have spent decades studying the distribution of bodies found in Pompeii to reconstruct who died where and when. And what they found tells a profound story about human decision-making under existential threat. In the first hour or two of the eruption, the pumice fall was survivable. It was terrifying, disorienting, and increasingly heavy, accumulating at a rate of about 6 inches per hour across the city, but it was not immediately lethal to someone who had shelter or protective covering. This is the window. This is when survival was still possible. The people who survived Pompeii almost certainly left during this window, and the evidence for this is remarkable. Of the estimated 11 to 20,000 people in Pompeii at the time of the eruption, archaeologists have so far found and documented approximately 1,150 bodies. Even accounting for excavation limitations and the fact that much of the city has been recovered, this suggests that the majority of Pompeii's population did, in fact, evacuate during the early phase of the eruption. They ran, down the roads, through the city gates, toward the harbor, toward the countryside, away from the mountain. They grabbed what they could, and the evidence for this is heartbreaking and human. In house after house, archaeologists have found small caches of valuables, coins, jewelry, small silver objects, bundled together near doorways or inside bags as if someone had hastily assembled them before fleeing. Some people made it out with their treasures. Some dropped them in the street, some never made it to the door. But a significant number of people stayed. Some stayed because they were physically unable to leave, the elderly, the infirm, the very young. Some stayed to protect their property. Some stayed because they genuinely believed the eruption would pass, that the gods would relent, that this was survivable if you simply waited it out in the cellar. And some stayed because of obligation. In the Villa of the Mysteries, one of the largest and most lavishly decorated houses ever excavated in Pompeii, archaeologists found the remains of slaves who had been chained. They could not run. Their masters fled or perhaps also died elsewhere in the chaos, and these people, bound by iron and by law, waited in the darkness of the cellar as the world ended above them. The eruption did not care about social class. By mid-afternoon, the pumice accumulation is severe. The streets are buried under a foot, then 2 feet, then 3 feet of loose volcanic material. Movement becomes difficult. The air is thick with fine ash particles that burn the lungs with every breath. The sky is black. It is, in the middle of the afternoon, as dark as the deepest part of the night, and the roofs are failing. This is the second great killer of Pompeii, and it's one that tends to get overshadowed by the more dramatic final event. The sheer weight of accumulated pumice, dense, heavy, relentless, began collapsing roofs across the city. Pompeii's buildings were not designed to bear thousands of pounds of volcanic debris. The weaker structures went first, then the larger ones. Anyone sheltering inside, anyone who had decided to wait it out in their home, was now in mortal danger from above, crushed beneath falling timber and tile and stone. The people who had stayed in the first hour now faced a second choice: venture out into the terrifying darkness and the falling pumice, or stay and risk being buried alive by their own ceiling. Many chose to stay. The psychology is understandable, even if the choice was fatal. Outside was chaos, darkness, screaming, unknown. Inside was familiar, even collapsing. The impulse to stay in a known space during catastrophic uncertainty is deeply human and deeply deadly. Some people tied pillows and cushions to their heads to protect themselves from the falling pumice and ventured out into the streets. Pliny the Younger describes survivors doing exactly this at Misenum. Some reached the city gates, some made it to the harbor, but the harbor offered its own horrors. The sea had retreated dramatically, a tsunami precursor effect from the seismic activity, leaving boats stranded in the mud and the beach exposed for hundreds of feet. Pliny the Elder, the naturalist, had sailed toward Pompeii and Herculaneum to attempt a rescue, and he found himself unable to land. The sea was too rough, the coast too disrupted. He sheltered at Stabiae, a few miles south, and there he died, overcome by toxic gases during a period of relative calm, when he and his companions had gone down to the shore to check the sea conditions. His nephew watched the eruption from a safe distance and survived to write about it. Proximity, timing, luck, decision. This is what survival came down to. Before we go further, if you're finding this reconstruction as gripping as I do, this is exactly the kind of content we make on this channel. History reconstructed. The real human story behind the dates and names. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. And if you're already subscribed, drop a comment below. Would you have stayed or run in the first hour? I genuinely want to know. Let's keep going. We need to pause Pompeii for a moment and talk about Herculaneum, because Herculaneum, the smaller, wealthier resort town just 4 miles west of Vesuvius, tells a different story, and understanding it changes everything we know about how people died that day. Herculaneum was not buried by pumice the way Pompeii was. It was hit by something far more violent, far faster, and far more total. Pyroclastic surges. These are the true monsters of Vesuvius. A pyroclastic surge is a superheated wave of gas, ash, and volcanic material that travels horizontally across the landscape at speeds of up to 300 miles per hour and temperatures that can reach over 500 degrees Celsius. It does not fall from the sky. It rolls across the ground. It does not care about walls or roofs or doors. It kills everything it touches in seconds, not by burning, but by a combination of thermal shock, asphyxiation, and pressure. For decades, archaeologists assumed that the residents of Herculaneum had successfully evacuated because few bodies were found in the city itself during the early excavations. Then in the 1980s, a shocking discovery was made. Down at the ancient shoreline, where hundreds of people had apparently fled to, perhaps hoping to be rescued by sea, archaeologists found the skeletons. More than 300 of them, huddled in boat chambers, the stone storage arches along the seafront. People who had made it to the beach, who had perhaps seen rescue boats on the horizon, who had waited. They waited too long. The pyroclastic surge reached Herculaneum first, at approximately midnight, 6 hours before it reached Pompeii. It hit the shoreline at somewhere between 300 and 500 degrees Celsius. Analysis of the skeletal remains showed that the victims died so fast, so instantaneously, that the heat caused the soft tissues to vaporize almost immediately, the brain matter to literally boil inside the skull, the blood to flash to steam. They felt nothing, the scientists say. It was too fast for pain. Whether this is a comfort is something I'll leave to you. Back in Pompeii, it is now the deep of night. Or what would be the deep of night if the sky weren't already black with ash? The eruption column, which has been sustained for roughly 12 hours, is beginning to destabilize. This is the point of no return. This is where Pompeii's story ends. A Plinian eruption column is, in physical terms, a balance of forces, the velocity and heat of the erupting material pushing upward against the pull of gravity. When the column begins to weaken, as the magma chamber partially empties, as the pressure fluctuates, the column can no longer sustain its own weight, and when that happens, it collapses. The term for what happens next is a column collapse, and it produces the deadliest phenomenon in volcanology, pyroclastic density currents. In the early hours of August 25th, the column collapsed at least 6 times, each collapse sending a pyroclastic current racing down the slopes of Vesuvius at terrifying speed. Each current was a flowing mass of superheated gas and volcanic material, dense, fast, and absolutely lethal. The first surges hit the areas closest to the mountain, the northern districts of Pompeii, the city of Herculaneum, the villas on the lower slopes. Anyone still alive in those areas died in the first wave. The later surges reached farther, and farther, and farther still. Volcanological analysis of the archaeological record shows that at least 6 distinct pyroclastic events struck Pompeii. The final ones buried the city under meters of material, not just ash, but solidified pyroclastic debris that hardened over centuries into the rock matrix that preserved those famous hollow spaces where the bodies had been. The plaster casts you've seen, the screaming figures, the family huddled together, the dog curled in on itself, chain still around its neck. These are not the burned remains of people, they are the voids, the negative spaces, left behind when the organic material decomposed inside the hardened volcanic rock. When archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli pioneered the technique of pouring plaster into those voids in the 1860s, he gave the dead back their shape, their final posture, their last moment of lived experience, frozen in volcanic stone for nearly 2,000 years. What those shapes tell us is devastating. The people who died in the final pyroclastic surges were not burning alive. The heat was so intense and so fast, hundreds of degrees in seconds, that they died before they could process what was happening. Many were found in what forensic anthropologists call the pugilistic pose, arms raised, legs bent, as if fighting. This is not a sign of struggle. It is a post-mortem contraction caused by intense heat causing muscle tissue to contract. They were already dead when their bodies assumed that position. They did not suffer. They were simply there. And then they were not. Now we come to the most important part of this reconstruction. What specifically can we learn from the archaeological and historical record about what it took to survive? Researchers have studied this question seriously, and the answers are both specific and universal. Decision timing was everything. The difference between survival and death in Pompeii was almost entirely a function of when you left, not whether you were strong, wealthy, well-connected, or lucky in any conventional sense. The people who left in the first hour, even the first 2 hours of the eruption, had an excellent chance of escaping. The roads out of the city were passable, the gates were open. The pumice was uncomfortable, but not immediately lethal with basic head protection. The pyroclastic surges, which killed almost everyone who remained, did not reach Pompeii until approximately 6:30 a.m. the following morning, nearly 18 hours after the eruption began. 18 hours. The people who died in Pompeii had in many cases nearly a full day to leave. And they didn't. Archaeological evidence supports a clear pattern. The further a body was found from a city gate, the later in the eruption sequence the person likely died. People found deep inside the city, in cellars, in inner rooms. These were the late decisions. The people who had tried to wait it out the longest, the people who perhaps believed right up until the final moments that the worst had passed. Knowledge was survival. This is perhaps the most heartbreaking finding of all. Pliny the Elder, who died, was actually better informed about the eruption than almost anyone in Pompeii. He knew it was extraordinary. He sailed toward it. He died because his knowledge made him bold in the wrong direction, toward the danger, not away from it. His nephew, who stayed back and observed, survived. In Stabiae, where Pliny the Elder died, the pattern among the survivors was different. Those who had kept themselves informed, who had maintained awareness of what the sea was doing, what the sky was doing, what the ash fall rate was, made better decisions about when to move and when to shelter. The people who retreated into denial, who perhaps told themselves and their families that everything would be fine, who went to bed on the night of August 24th and tried to sleep through the noise. They were far less likely to make the correct survival decisions when the final surges arrived. Social bonds were a double-edged sword. One of the most recurring patterns in the archaeological record of Pompeii is groups. People died together, families, clusters of friends, groups of slaves. There is something deeply moving about this. The instinct to stay with the people you love in the face of catastrophe is one of the most human things we know. But from a survival standpoint, it was frequently fatal. Groups move more slowly than individuals. Groups require consensus, and consensus takes time. A family with small children, elderly members, or anyone physically impaired had to either slow down to stay together or make impossible choices. The evidence suggests most chose to stay together. The result in many cases was that the slowest member of the group determined the fate of everyone. There is a skeleton found in what is now called the House of the Gold Bracelet. A woman found with 2 children and another adult, all sheltering in a corner together. She was wearing jewelry. She had time to bring it. She had time, perhaps, to leave. But she stayed. And the 4 of them died together. We do not know why she stayed. We never will. But we recognize the impulse. We understand it. We might have made the same choice. Very few first-hand accounts of the Pompeii eruption survive. The most important, and the only true eyewitness account, is Pliny the Younger's letters to the historian Tacitus, written roughly 25 years after the event. Pliny was 17 at the time. He was staying with his uncle in Misenum, at the northern end of the Bay of Naples, about 18 miles from Vesuvius. He watched the eruption from a distance that, while still terrifying, was safe enough for survival. His account is extraordinary, precise, detailed, and written with the controlled emotion of someone who has processed a trauma over decades. He describes the initial column rising like a pine tree. He describes the darkness that fell over the bay. He describes the earth shaking so violently that they could not stay indoors. They went out into the open to avoid being buried by collapsing buildings. He describes the sea retreating from the shore. He describes fleeing with his mother as the darkness overtook them. Ash so thick in the air that they could not see their hands in front of their faces. People falling, screaming, torches guttering out. Everyone assuming, packed with complete rationality, that the entire world was ending. The darkness was not like an overcast night or a moonless night, he wrote to Tacitus, but like a closed room without a lamp. He survived. His mother survived. His uncle did not. What emerges from his account and from the fragmentary accounts of others who escaped the region is a portrait of survival that is recognizable across all of human history. The people who made it through were not superhuman. They were not specially trained or uniquely resilient. They were simply the people who kept moving, who didn't stop, who overcame the terrible, powerful, seductive instinct to stay in place and wait for things to get better. They walked away from everything they knew, and they lived. Here is where the science of 2024 adds something genuinely new to this 2,000-year-old story. AI-assisted reconstruction of ancient cities and events is still a young field, but it's advancing rapidly. Using detailed photogrammetric mapping of the Pompeii excavation site, combined with historical sources, material analysis, and computational fluid dynamics modeling of the eruption itself, researchers have been able to do something that was impossible even 10 years ago. They can simulate in 3 dimensions and in real time what it would have looked like to be in Pompeii during the eruption. They can model the ashfall rate, the pumice accumulation, the temperature, the visibility, the sound. They can trace, based on known street layouts and city gate positions, the most likely evacuation routes, and they can identify the bottlenecks, the places where crowds would have slowed, where the narrow alleys would have created fatal delays. What this modeling shows with precision is that the window for safe evacuation, the window for getting clear of Pompeii before the pyroclastic surges arrived, was almost exactly 12 hours. From roughly 1:00 p.m. on August 24th to roughly 1:00 a.m. on August 25th, a determined person on foot could have covered the 10 to 15 miles necessary to reach relative safety. 12 hours, walking speed, that was survival. The modeling also reveals something profound about the city's geography. The roads leading south and southwest, towards Stabiae, toward the coast, away from the mountain, were relatively clear of the worst of the pumice fall for the first several hours. The roads leading north toward Vesuvius were death sentences. The people who tried to flee in the wrong direction, confused by the darkness, the noise, the disorientation of disaster, walked toward the mountain. AI reconstruction can show us exactly where those roads were, which gates they led to, which ones were still passable at 6 p.m., at midnight, at 3 a.m. It is, in a strange way, a gift. To be able to say, here, this road, this direction. This was the way out. 2,000 years too late to help anyone, but perhaps not too late to learn something. And now we reach the part of this story that I think matters most. Not the volcanology, not the archaeology, but the very human, very uncomfortable question that Pompeii asks us across 20 centuries. Why didn't more people leave? Because this question is not just about Pompeii. It's about every evacuation order that gets ignored, every flood warning dismissed, every wildfire evacuation that people delay because they don't want to leave the house, every slow-building catastrophe that people stay inside of because the danger feels abstract right up until the moment it doesn't. The psychological research on disaster response is extensive, and it tells a remarkably consistent story. Most people, when confronted with the early stages of a disaster, do not panic. They don't run. They seek information. They consult their neighbors. They wait to see what other people are doing. They normalize. They tell themselves stories about why this isn't as bad as it looks. And then, when the danger becomes undeniable, they often freeze. In Pompeii, the normalization had been going on for 17 years, since the earthquake of 62 AD. The mountain had been sending signals for nearly 2 decades, and each time the city rebuilt, adapted, and continued. The neural pathway in the Pompeian brain, if we can speak of it that way, was deeply grooved toward staying, toward rebuilding, toward the certainty that the city would endure because it always had. The eruption broke that assumption completely, but the breaking took time, and the time it took was fatal. There's another factor that deserves to be said plainly: wealth. The distribution of bodies in Pompeii correlates with social class in ways that are uncomfortable but important. The wealthy residents, those with the means to leave, with horses, with carts, with social connections to people further from the danger, were disproportionately among those who evacuated early. The evidence for this is in the empty houses of the affluent districts. They left, and they took their most valuable things with them. The poor, the enslaved, the elderly, the sick. These are disproportionately represented among the bodies. This is not unique to 79 AD. It is one of the most consistent patterns in the history of natural disasters. Those with resources survive. Those without them are left to manage with what they have in a timeline that is not always theirs to control. Pompeii did not invent inequality in disaster. It simply preserved it in volcanic ash for 20 centuries. By dawn on August 25th, it was over. The eruption continued in diminishing intensity for another day or two, but the catastrophic event, the column collapses, the pyroclastic surges, the total burial of Pompeii, was complete. The city lay under 4 to 6 meters of volcanic material. The Sarno River had shifted course. The coastline had changed. The landscape around Vesuvius looked nothing like it had 48 hours earlier. Survivors, those who had fled in time, those who had made it to neighboring towns, those who had been elsewhere on August 24th, returned to the edges of the disaster zone and found nothing. No landmarks, no rooftops. Not even the tops of the tallest buildings showed above the debris. Pompeii was simply gone. Some attempts were made to excavate homes in the immediate aftermath. Tunnels were dug, following the street grid which some survivors still remembered, to recover valuables from buried houses. Evidence of these ancient looting tunnels has been found by modern archaeologists. You can see where someone, in the weeks or months after the eruption, broke through a wall to reach a strongbox or a cache of jewelry left behind in the rush to flee. Then the tunnels stopped. The recovery attempts ceased. People moved on. Within a generation or two, Pompeii's exact location had been largely forgotten. New farms and new towns grew up around and above the buried city. A river was eventually named Sarno. A road was built. And Pompeii slept. It slept for 1,500 years. The systematic rediscovery began in earnest in 1748 under the Bourbon King Charles III of Naples. What the excavators found, and what has been coming out of the ground ever since, was a city arrested in time, the bread still in the ovens, the graffiti still on the walls, the election posters still painted at eye level on the streets, the remains of people still in their last positions, in their last moments. Time had not destroyed Pompeii, it had preserved it. Let me leave you with something that I think about every time I work through the story of Pompeii. In 2023, the Pompeii Archaeological Park, using AI-enhanced imaging and photogrammetric mapping, reconstructed the faces of several of the eruption victims with a level of detail never previously achieved. For the first time, you could look at these people who had been stone and plaster for almost 2,000 years, and see something approaching what they actually looked like. A young man in his 20s, a woman who appears to be in her 30s, mid-motion, perhaps running. The effect is, and I say this as someone who has looked at a great deal of archaeological material, genuinely startling. Because what you see is not an ancient Roman, not a historical artifact. You see a person. You see someone who was alive the way you are alive, who was worried about ordinary things, who ate breakfast that morning, who had people they loved, who had no idea what was coming. And you realize the distance between us and them is not the 2,000 years of history. It's not the language, the culture, the empire. It's not even the mountain. The distance is nothing. They are us. We are them. And the thing that killed most of them, the thing that stands at the center of this entire story, the axis around which everything turns, was not the mountain, not Vesuvius, not geology or chemistry or physics. It was the assumption that things would probably be fine. It was the deep, reflexive, almost instinctual human tendency to normalize danger, to wait for more information, to stay in place and see what happens. It was the refusal, not born of stupidity but of love, of habit, of the sheer psychological weight of the familiar, to believe that the worst could actually happen here, to them, today. Vesuvius gave them hours. It gave them a morning of strange smells and agitated dogs and warm wells. It gave them a column of smoke visible from 50 miles away. It gave them falling pumice that was survivable with a pillow tied to your head. It gave them time. And the ones who used that time, who looked at the smoke and felt the warm well water and heard the dogs and said, "This is the moment. This is when we go." Those people lived. The rest of them are plaster. Vesuvius is not dormant. It is not extinct. It last erupted in 1944, living memory just 80 years ago. Today, approximately 3 million people live in the area volcanologists call the Red Zone around Vesuvius. The city of Naples sits 12 miles from the summit. The towns of Herculaneum and Torre del Greco, Portici, Ercolano, they are modern cities, densely populated, built on the same slopes where the ancient estates once stood. Italy has an evacuation plan. The plan involves moving those 3 million people within 72 hours of a predicted eruption. Volcanologists monitor Vesuvius continuously. They watch the seismographs. They measure ground deformation. They track gas emissions from the crater. They are trying to do what nobody could do in 79 AD, read the mountain's intentions before it's too late. Whether 3 million people would actually leave, whether the ancient instinct to stay, to normalize, to wait and see would reassert itself against all the data and all the warnings, is a question that no one alive today can answer. History, however, has a suggestion. The people of Pompeii were not primitive. They were not ignorant in any meaningful sense of the word. They were farmers and merchants and politicians and artists and priests and parents. They built one of the most sophisticated urban environments in the ancient world. They had running water, central heating, public libraries, election campaigns, fast food restaurants, and a functioning legal system. They were us. And they stayed because we stay. Because the familiar pulls at us in ways that logic cannot always overcome. Because leaving is an admission of defeat that costs more than most of us are willing to pay until the cost of staying becomes even higher. The ones who survived Pompeii survived because they made a different calculation earlier. Not because they were braver, not because they were smarter, but because in the critical window of the first few hours, something tipped the scale. A neighbor who ran, a sound that was too wrong to explain, a moment of gut-level terror that overrode the voice saying wait and see. And they moved. They walked out of Pompeii, into the ash and the darkness and the falling pumice and the unknown. And they never looked back. If this story stayed with you, if you found yourself asking which choice you would have made, that's exactly the reaction we aim for on this channel. We reconstruct the human experience of history. Not the dates, not the kings, not the battles, but the people. What they felt, what they decided, what it cost them. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Which moment in this story hit you hardest? The slaves who were chained, the woman with the gold bracelet who stayed, the 3 million people living near Vesuvius right now. Tell me. I read every single one. And I'll see you in the next reconstruction.